Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe, filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact, rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. The show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable, suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time, with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, Later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog.
Welcome back, night owls and daydreamers. Tonight we're diving deep into the chaotic world of Quahog with some fascinating Family Guy facts that'll have you drifting off to sleep with a smile. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the Griffin family madness, these relaxing tidbits about one of animation's most controversial shows will guide you gently into dreamland. Let's start our journey back to 1999, when Family Guy first graced television screens. The show almost never happened at all. Creator Seth MacFarlane was working as a writer and animator for Hanna-Barbera when he created two animated shorts called The Life of Larry and Larry and Steve. These featured a man and his talking dog, which would eventually evolve into Peter and Brian Griffin. Fox executives were so impressed with MacFarlane's work that they gave him an unprecedented deal for someone so young, making him the youngest person ever to create a primetime series for the network at just 24 years old. The original pilot episode had a much smaller budget than later episodes, which is why the animation looks noticeably different. The Griffin house interior was actually based on the house from another famous animated family, but with some creative liberties taken. MacFarlane has mentioned that he wanted the show to feel lived in and realistic, despite all the absurd situations the family would find themselves in. Speaking of the Griffin family, each character was carefully designed to represent different aspects of the American family dynamic. Peter Griffin, the bumbling patriarch, was inspired by MacFarlane's own father and various blue-collar workers he'd observed growing up in Connecticut. His distinctive laugh wasn't originally planned. It just happened naturally during recording sessions, and the creators decided to keep it because it felt so authentic to the character. Lois Griffin underwent several design changes before settling on her final appearance. Originally, she was going to have a completely different personality, more stern and less patient with her family's antics. The writers quickly realized that having someone slightly more grounded would make the show's more outrageous moments feel more believable. Her background as a wealthy heiress was added later to explain how the family could afford their lifestyle despite Peter's various job changes and general incompetence. The character of Meg started out very differently than how fans know her today. In the early seasons, she was treated more like a regular teenage daughter dealing with typical adolescent problems. The running joke of the entire family treating her terribly wasn't established until later seasons. This shift reflected the show's overall evolution toward more extreme and absurd humor over time. Chris Griffin was originally going to be the smart one in the family, but the writers felt this would create too much overlap with Brian's role as the voice of reason. Instead, they made him dim-witted but good-hearted, which created better comedic opportunities and family dynamics. His voice actor actually had to learn to make his voice crack consistently to maintain the character's adolescent sound as the show progressed through multiple seasons. Stewie Griffin is perhaps the most complex character in terms of development. His evil, genius baby persona was inspired by various movie villains, but his sophisticated vocabulary and adult concerns created an interesting contradiction that the writers loved exploring. The ambiguity around his sexual orientation was intentional from early on, with MacFarlane wanting to create a character that defied easy categorization. The family dog Brian started as a relatively simple character, but evolved into something much more complex. He was meant to be the straight man to the family's chaos, offering occasional wisdom and commentary. His human-like behavior was the central joke, a dog who acted more civilized than his human family members. The character served as MacFarlane's voice in many episodes, expressing his own political views and social commentary through Brian's dialogue and actions. Family Guy's animation style was heavily influenced by classic cartoons, but with modern sensibilities. The character designs were kept relatively simple to allow for faster animation production, but the backgrounds were often incredibly detailed. The color palette was specifically chosen to feel warm and inviting, like a real family home, which contrasted nicely with the show's often chaotic storylines. The show's famous cutaway gags weren't originally planned as a major feature. They started as occasional diversions but became more frequent when the writers realized how much creative freedom they provided. These sequences allowed the show to explore completely unrelated scenarios and parody different time periods, movies, and cultural phenomena without being constrained by the main plot. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how much the voice actors contribute to their characters' development. Many of the show's funniest moments came from improvisation during recording sessions. The actors would often suggest alternative line readings or add physical comedy that would then be animated to match their performance. The show's musical numbers weren't part of the original concept, but became increasingly important as the series progressed. McFarlane's background in musical theater and his love of classic show tunes influenced many of these sequences. The elaborate production numbers often required months of preparation and coordination between the animation, music, and voice departments. Family Guy's relationship with censorship has been complicated throughout its run. The show has pushed boundaries since its inception, but network standards have evolved over the years. Many episodes have alternate versions with different jokes or sequences depending on when and where they're broadcast. This has created an interesting archive of content that varies significantly across different platforms and time periods. The series has featured an incredible array of celebrity guest stars over the years, many of whom were fans of the show before appearing on it. Some celebrities have become recurring characters, while others made single appearances that became memorable moments for fans. The show's writers often write specific roles with particular actors in mind, creating unique opportunities for both established and emerging performers. Behind the scenes, Family Guy's production schedule is incredibly demanding. Each episode takes months to complete, from initial script to final animation. The process involves dozens of artists, writers, and technicians working in coordination. Despite this complexity, the show has maintained a remarkably consistent output for over 2 decades. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond television. Family Guy references and quotes have become part of everyday conversation for many fans. The show's influence can be seen in countless other animated series that followed, many of which adopted similar humor styles and narrative structures. Family Guy's cancellation and subsequent revival is one of television's most interesting stories. After being canceled twice, the show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on cable networks. This proved that there was still a significant audience for the show's particular brand of humor, leading to its eventual return to primetime television. The evolution of animation technology has dramatically changed how Family Guy is produced. Early seasons required hand-drawn animation cells, while modern episodes are created entirely digitally. This technological shift has allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but some fans prefer the slightly rougher aesthetic of the earlier seasons. Family Guy's international success has led to numerous international versions and adaptations. Different countries have created their own versions of the show with local characters and cultural references. These adaptations provide fascinating insights into how humor translates across different cultures and societies. The show's merchandise empire extends into virtually every category imaginable. From clothing and toys to video games and books, Family Guy has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has helped fund the show's continued production and allowed for increasingly ambitious episodes and special events. Family Guy's writing process involves a large team of contributors working collaboratively. Story ideas can come from anywhere, and the show's writer's room is known for its freewheeling creative atmosphere. Many of the show's most memorable episodes began as simple throwaway comments that evolved into full storylines through group brainstorming sessions. The show's holiday episodes have, quote, become annual traditions for many families. These special episodes often feature elaborate musical numbers and heartwarming moments that contrast with the show's typically irreverent tone. The Christmas episodes in particular have become comfort viewing for many fans during the holiday season. Family Guy's relationship with social media has evolved significantly over the years. The show's official accounts regularly share behind-the-scenes content, and the writers often interact directly with fans online. This direct connection between creators and audience has influenced how episodes are developed and promoted. The series has tackled numerous social and political issues throughout its run, often generating significant discussion and sometimes controversy. These episodes demonstrate the show's willingness to engage with serious topics while maintaining its comedic perspective. The balance between entertainment and commentary has been a defining characteristic of the series. Family Guy's sound design is incredibly detailed, with each episode featuring hundreds of individual sound effects and musical cues. The show's audio team works closely with the animation department to ensure that every visual gag is supported by appropriate sound. This attention to audio detail helps create the show's distinctive atmosphere. The series has spawned several spin-offs and related projects over the years. These additional shows have allowed the creators to explore different aspects of the Family Guy universe and experiment with new storytelling approaches. Some have been more successful than others, but all have contributed to the overall Family Guy mythology. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing can be seen in numerous other television shows and movies. The show's particular style of rapid-fire jokes and pop culture references has become a template that many other creators have adapted and modified for their own projects. The show's live performances and special events have created unique opportunities for fans to experience Family Guy in different contexts. These events often feature the voice actors performing in character and provide insights into the creative process that aren't available through the regular episodes. Family Guy's educational impact, while perhaps unintentional, has been significant. Many viewers have discovered new music, learned historical facts, or been introduced to classic movies through the show's references and parodies. This accidental educational component has made the show valuable beyond pure entertainment. The series has maintained its relevance across multiple generations of viewers. Parents who watched the show when it first aired now watch it with their own children, creating shared cultural experiences that span decades. This intergenerational appeal has helped ensure the show's continued success. Family Guy's production team includes numerous talented artists who have gone on to create their own successful projects. The show has served as a training ground for many animators, writers, and voice actors who have used their experience to launch their own careers in entertainment. The show's approach to continuity is deliberately loose, allowing for creative freedom while occasionally referencing past events. This flexible approach to storytelling has enabled the writers to explore virtually any scenario without being constrained by previous episodes. Family Guy's relationship with its fan community is uniquely interactive. The show's creators regularly acknowledge fan theories and suggestions, sometimes incorporating them into actual episodes. This collaborative relationship between creators and audience has helped maintain the show's popularity over many years. As we drift towards sleep tonight, remember that Family Guy represents more than just animated comedy. It's a cultural phenomenon that has brought laughter to millions of viewers worldwide. The show's ability to evolve while maintaining its core identity demonstrates the power of creative persistence and the importance of connecting with audiences on multiple levels. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with the gentle chaos of Quahog, where anything is possible and laughter is always just around the corner. The Griffin family will be there waiting when you wake up, ready with new adventures and timeless humor that continues to entertain after all these years. What if I told you that one cartoon dad has a higher body count than most movie villains? Today we're diving deep into the chaotic world of Peter Griffin and counting every single person this animated maniac has eliminated. Trust me, the numbers are absolutely insane. Most people think Peter Griffin is just a lovable goofball who makes stupid mistakes. But when you actually sit down and track his actions across hundreds of Family Guy episodes, a terrifying pattern emerges. This isn't just some clumsy dad bumbling through life. This is a walking disaster zone who leaves destruction wherever he goes. I spent weeks combing through every Family Guy episode, taking notes, rewinding scenes, and meticulously documenting each incident. What I discovered shocked me. Peter Griffin isn't just accidentally dangerous. He's legitimately one of the most prolific killers in television history. And the worst part? He never faces any real consequences. Let's start from the very beginning with Peter's first confirmed elimination. In only the second episode of the entire series, Peter runs down the Roadrunner from Looney Tunes while driving. Just flattens the poor bird completely. When asked if he hit something, Peter casually dismisses it and keeps driving. That casual attitude toward taking a life, it sets the tone for everything that follows. The very next episode, things escalate dramatically. A tour bus pulls up to the Griffin house, and Peter completely loses his mind. He grabs a shotgun and opens fire on the entire vehicle. 3 people eliminated just like that. His reaction to seeing strangers at his door was immediate violence. No questions asked. No attempt at communication. Just grab a weapon and start shooting. Then there's the hospital incident that really showcases Peter's dangerous incompetence. Somehow this man was allowed to work as a doctor, which should have been a red flag for everyone involved. During what appears to be a routine procedure, Peter's negligence directly leads to a patient's death. The fact that he was even permitted near medical equipment shows a serious breakdown in the system. But Peter's killing spree really picks up steam when he temporarily takes over Death's job. With supernatural powers at his disposal, Peter becomes exponentially more dangerous. He kills 2 airline pilots mid-flight simply by touching them. Thousands of passengers could have died if not for quick thinking from another character who managed to land the plane. Peter's reaction to nearly causing a massive aviation disaster? He jokes about needing mittens. The pattern becomes clear early on. Peter has zero regard for human life and even less understanding of consequences. When tasked with simple babysitting duties, he leaves an infant to drown in a bathtub. His parenting instincts are so fundamentally broken that he can't even keep a baby alive for one evening. Speaking of children, Peter's relationship with kids is consistently disturbing. When he briefly works as a nanny dressed up like Mary Poppins, 2 children end up dead and hidden under a bed. These weren't accidents or misunderstandings. Peter's presence in any childcare situation inevitably leads to tragedy. But the really chilling moments come when Peter turns his violence toward his own family. In one episode, his negligence with home repairs leads to carbon monoxide poisoning that kills Lois, Chris, and Meg. Even though they're miraculously fine in the next episode, Peter's actions directly cause their deaths. A husband and father who accidentally kills his entire family should be traumatized for life. Peter just moves on like nothing happened. The mob-style execution of Brian over some leftover food shows Peter's capacity for cold-blooded murder. When his dog eats his chicken and drinks his cream soda, Peter responds with gangster-level violence. The casual way he eliminates a family member over such trivial matters reveals the true depth of his sociopathic tendencies. Peter's parenting philosophy seems to involve extreme violence as conflict resolution. When his daughter faces bullying at school, instead of speaking to teachers or parents, Peter takes matters into his own hands. The bully doesn't survive the encounter. Later, when presenting what he thinks is the bully's head to his son, Peter admits he got the wrong kid entirely. He murdered an innocent deaf child by mistake and shows no remorse whatsoever. The axe murder of Cleveland represents a turning point where Peter's violence becomes increasingly graphic and disturbing. This isn't cartoon slapstick anymore. This is genuine horror movie material. The casual way Peter wields deadly weapons against friends and neighbors shows a complete break from reality and basic human decency. From this point forward, Peter's methods become increasingly brutal, and his body count starts climbing exponentially. The chainsaw massacres alone account for dozens of victims. Peter goes from house to house like a serial killer, methodically eliminating anyone in his path. The fact that he seems to enjoy this level of violence makes it even more disturbing. One of the most senseless killings involves Peter murdering a child just to steal a jet ski. When his family points out they're literally standing next to their boat, Peter ignores them and commits homicide anyway. This isn't about necessity or even twisted logic. This is pure evil masked as comedy. The restaurant incident where Peter kills a woman named Erica while trying to prove his cooking skills demonstrates how his ego and incompetence create deadly combinations. Peter's need to show off constantly puts innocent people in mortal danger. Peter's involvement in sports inevitably leads to casualties. Every athletic activity he participates in somehow results in someone's death. Whether it's shot put, treasure hunting, or any other recreational activity, Peter transforms harmless fun into lethal encounters. The drunk driving incidents reveal another layer of Peter's criminal behavior. He openly admits to calculating exactly how much alcohol he can consume while still being able to drive. This premeditated approach to endangering others shows Peter knows his actions are dangerous, but simply doesn't care about the consequences. The Boston Marathon Massacre stands out as one of Peter's most heinous acts. Running down dozens of innocent runners during a major sporting event crosses the line from accidental violence into mass murder territory. The casualty count from this single incident rivals actual terrorist attacks. Peter's racism leads to deadly encounters as well. His casual bigotry creates situations where innocent people lose their lives simply for existing in Peter's presence. The anthropology store incident perfectly captures how Peter's prejudices fuel his violent tendencies. When Peter briefly becomes death incarnate, his kill count skyrockets through supernatural means. Having the literal power of life and death in Peter's hands is like giving a nuclear weapon to a toddler. The pilots who die simply from Peter's touch represent just the beginning of the carnage. The hospital bombings showcase Peter's evolution into full-scale terrorism. Destroying entire medical facilities because he disagrees with vaccines makes Peter an anti-science extremist willing to commit mass murder for his beliefs. The estimated casualty counts from these attacks reach into the hundreds. Peter's accidental involvement with actual terrorists leads to multiple explosive incidents. His friendship with a terrorist operative results in several bombings throughout the city. Even when Peter tries to do the right thing by helping authorities, he ends up triggering more explosions that kill dozens of innocent people. The secret society incident demonstrates Peter's capacity for large-scale destruction. Burning down an entire facility housing historical documents leads to hundreds of deaths. Peter's inability to consider consequences means every action he takes has the potential for massive collateral damage. The presidential fight with Donald Trump represents the peak of Peter's destructive potential. Their brawl triggers nuclear missile launches that devastate multiple population centers. The casualty count from this single incident reaches into the thousands. Peter literally causes acts of war through his inability to control his temper. But none of Peter's individual acts of violence compare to his ongoing feud with Ernie the Giant Chicken. This running conflict has resulted in more deaths and destruction than actual wars. Every encounter between these two characters leaves dozens of innocent bystanders dead. Their first major battle destroys multiple vehicles, causes plane crashes, and brings down entire buildings. The Ferry wheel incident alone accounts for hundreds of casualties, as the massive structure rolls through populated areas. Their fights aren't contained conflicts between two individuals. They're citywide disasters that claim enormous numbers of innocent lives. The cruise ship battle represents the most destructive single incident in their ongoing war. When their fight moves into the engine room, they lose control of a massive passenger vessel that crashes into a major city. The resulting destruction levels multiple city blocks and kills hundreds of people. This single incident qualifies as one of the worst maritime disasters in history. Their time travel battle creates paradoxes that threaten the fabric of reality itself. When Peter and Ernie use time manipulation technology to continue their fight across multiple historical periods, they create cascading effects that alter the course of human history. The scientist who created the time machine becomes an early casualty of their temporal warfare. The NASA facility destruction shows how their conflict has escalated beyond Earth itself. Their space battle crashes back to the planet and destroys an ocean oil rig, adding environmental disaster to their already impressive list of crimes against humanity. The reverse time sequence battle creates some of the most confusing and deadly encounters in their entire conflict. When everything starts happening backwards, the destruction becomes even more widespread and incomprehensible. Plane crashes, building collapses, and mass casualties all blend together in a chaotic symphony of violence. When you calculate the total casualties from just the Peter versus Ernie conflicts, the number reaches nearly 1,500 deaths. This means half of Peter's entire body count comes from a single ongoing dispute that started over an expired coupon. The fact that such trivial origins led to such massive destruction perfectly encapsulates Peter's character. The crossover episode with The Simpsons showcases Peter's ability to bring his destructive tendencies to other fictional universes. His fight with Homer Simpson levels significant portions of Springfield and adds another 100 casualties to his count. Even when visiting other shows, Peter cannot help but create mayhem and death. Throughout all of these incidents, certain patterns emerge that make Peter's behavior even more disturbing. He shows no remorse for any of his actions. He never learns from his mistakes or attempts to modify his behavior. Most importantly, he faces no meaningful consequences for any of his crimes. The legal system in Peter's universe seems completely incapable of holding him accountable. Despite committing mass murder on multiple occasions, Peter continues to walk free and repeat his destructive patterns. This creates a world where violence has no consequences and human life has no value. Peter's family and friends enable his behavior by treating his mass murder sprees as minor inconveniences rather than serious crimes. When someone consistently kills innocent people, the appropriate response is not to laugh it off and wait for the next episode. The normalization of Peter's violence makes everyone around him complicit in his crimes. The media within Peter's world also fails to adequately report on his actions. Despite causing multiple disasters that should dominate news cycles for months, Peter's crimes are quickly forgotten and life returns to normal. This unrealistic portrayal of consequences sends dangerous messages about accountability and justice. When you add up every death directly attributable to Peter Griffin's actions, the final count reaches approximately 2,800 people. This makes him one of the most prolific killers in entertainment history. For context, this body count exceeds many actual historical mass murderers and rivals casualty figures from major military conflicts. The fact that this level of violence is presented as comedy raises serious questions about desensitization to violence in media. When mass murder becomes a punchline, society loses important moral boundaries that separate acceptable behavior from criminal acts. Peter Griffin represents the logical extreme of consequence-free violence in entertainment. His character demonstrates what happens when someone with destructive tendencies faces no accountability for their actions. The result is escalating violence that eventually reaches genocidal proportions. The most disturbing aspect of Peter's character is how his violence is often portrayed as justified or at least understandable. Whether defending his family, pursuing his goals, or simply satisfying his curiosity, Peter's murderous actions are presented within contexts that make them seem reasonable to viewers. This normalization of extreme violence has real-world implications for how audiences process and respond to actual violence in their daily lives. When fictional characters commit mass murder without consequences, it becomes easier to dismiss real violence as less serious than it actually is. The Peter Griffin phenomenon also reveals how comedy can be used to mask serious social problems. By presenting his violent tendencies as humorous character quirks rather than serious mental health issues, the show avoids confronting the deeper implications of his behavior. In conclusion, Peter Griffin's body count of 2,800 people makes him one of the deadliest characters in television history. His casual approach to mass murder, combined with the complete lack of consequences he faces, creates a character who embodies the worst aspects of unchecked violence and social irresponsibility. While Family Guy presents his actions as comedy, the sheer scale of death and destruction he causes reveals a character who belongs in prison rather than primetime television. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, Scrolling through your phone at 2 in the morning, and you just need something to help your brain wind down? Well, tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy with some absolutely random facts that'll either put you to sleep or keep you up wondering how Seth MacFarlane's mind actually works. So grab your pillow, get comfortable, and let's explore the bizarre universe of Quahog together. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons, but something incredible happened that brought it back from the dead. Adult Swim started airing reruns, and the show's popularity exploded like Peter Griffin trying to open a jar of pickles. The DVD sales went through the roof, and suddenly Fox realized they'd made a massive mistake. So in 2005, Family Guy came back from cancellation, making it one of the very few shows in television history to pull off this resurrection trick twice. Speaking of resurrections, here's something that might surprise you about Brian Griffin's voice. Seth MacFarlane, who voices the intellectual dog, actually based Brian's sophisticated accent and mannerisms on his own personality. MacFarlane has said in interviews that Brian is essentially his voice in the show, which explains why the dog often serves as the voice of reason, at least when he's not having his own ridiculous adventures. It's almost like MacFarlane created his own animated alter ego to comment on the chaos around him. Now here's a fact that'll make you appreciate the show's attention to detail, even in its most absurd moments. The Griffin family's address is 31 Spooner Street, and this isn't just a random number pulled out of thin air. The address is actually a reference to the street where one of the show's early writers lived. But what's even more interesting is that if you look carefully at episodes throughout the series, you'll notice that the layout of the Griffin house has changed multiple times. Sometimes there are different numbers of windows, the staircase moves around, and rooms appear and disappear like they're in some kind of cartoon physics experiment. Let's talk about Stewie Griffin for a moment, because this character has one of the most fascinating evolution arcs in animated television. In the early seasons, Stewie was genuinely diabolical, plotting to kill his mother Lois and take over the world with elaborate schemes that would make a Bond villain jealous. But as the series progressed, the writers gradually shifted his character from evil mastermind to sophisticated, cultured, and eventually openly exploring his sexuality. Seth MacFarlane has mentioned that this evolution happened naturally as they discovered what made the character funnier and more relatable. Here's something that might blow your mind about the show's production process. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from start to finish. That means when you're watching a new episode, the writers were working on it almost a year ago. This lengthy production timeline is part of why the show sometimes feels like it's commenting on events that happened ages ago, but it also explains the incredible attention to detail in the animation and voice work. Did you know that the famous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned to become a recurring gag? The first chicken fight appeared in a Season 1 episode as a quick throwaway joke, but it became so popular with fans that the writers kept bringing it back, each time making the fights longer and more elaborate. These sequences have become some of the most expensive and time-consuming parts of the show to animate, sometimes taking up several minutes of screen time with incredibly detailed action sequences. Speaking of expensive sequences, the show's cutaway gags, those random flashbacks that interrupt the main story, were actually inspired by classic comedy shows like The Carol Burnett Show. Seth MacFarlane wanted to recreate that feeling of sketches within a larger show, but he took it to the extreme by making the cutaways completely disconnected from the main plot. Some of these gags have become so iconic that they've spawned their own merchandise and internet memes. Here's a heartwarming fact about the show's impact on real families. Despite all the dysfunction and chaos of the Griffin family, many real families have said that watching Family Guy together has actually brought them closer. There's something about laughing at Peter's ridiculous antics that makes your own family's problems seem manageable in comparison. The show has become a bonding experience for parents and older children who can appreciate the humor together. Let's dive into some voice acting trivia that'll make you listen to the characters differently. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg Griffin, was only 14 years old when she started on the show. She actually lied about her age during the audition process. And by the time the producers found out how young she really was, they were so impressed with her work that they kept her on. She's been voicing Meg for over 20 years now, which means she's literally grown up with the character. Here's something interesting about the show's relationship with censorship. While Family Guy pushes boundaries constantly, there are actually several episodes that have never aired on television due to content issues. These episodes exist in various forms, sometimes appearing on DVD releases or streaming platforms with heavy warnings. The writers often create content knowing it might be too controversial for broadcast, almost as a creative challenge to see how far they can push the envelope. The character of Cleveland Brown was so popular that he got his own spin-off show. But here's something you might not know about that decision. The Cleveland show was partly created because Mike Henry, who voices Cleveland, wanted to explore what it would be like to have an animated show centered around an African-American family. While the spin-off only lasted 4 seasons, it allowed the writers to tackle different types of stories and social issues than they could in Family Guy. Did you know that several major celebrities have turned down guest appearances on Family Guy because they felt the show was too controversial? But for every celebrity who said no, there were dozens who said yes, often because they were fans of the show themselves. Some of the most surprising guest stars have been people you'd never expect to appear on an adult animated comedy, including several politicians and news anchors who were willing to make fun of themselves. Here's a production fact that shows how much work goes into creating the show's signature style. The animators use a specific color palette that's deliberately muted compared to other animated shows. This choice was made to give Family Guy a slightly more realistic feel, even though the content is completely absurd. The character designs are also intentionally simple, which allows the animators to focus on facial expressions and body language that enhance the comedy. Let's talk about the show's impact on internet culture. Family Guy was one of the first television shows to really embrace social media and online fan communities. The writers regularly read fan feedback and sometimes incorporate popular fan theories or suggestions into actual episodes. This interaction between creators and fans was revolutionary for television at the time and has influenced how many other shows approach their online presence. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's educational value. Despite its reputation for crude humor, Family Guy has actually introduced many viewers to classical music, literature, and historical references they might never have encountered otherwise. The show's cutaway gags often reference everything from Shakespeare to classical composers, and many fans have said they discovered new interests because of jokes they didn't initially understand. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons has always been interesting, especially since both shows air on the same network. There have been several crossover episodes and references between the shows, but there's also been some friendly rivalry. Seth MacFarlane has always acknowledged The Simpsons as a major influence, but he's also tried to carve out a distinct identity for Family Guy that sets it apart from Matt Groening's creation. Here's a fact about the show's international reach that might surprise you. Family Guy has been translated into dozens of languages and adapted for different cultures around the world. In some countries, certain jokes have to be completely rewritten because the original references don't translate culturally. This has led to some interesting variations where different versions of the same episode can have completely different gags while maintaining the same basic story structure. Did you know that several episodes of Family Guy have been turned into stage productions? There have been live performances of selected episodes at various comedy festivals, with voice actors performing their roles on stage while animation plays in the background. These performances have given fans a unique way to experience the show and have shown how well the writing works, even without the visual component. The show's theme song, which seems simple enough, actually went through multiple versions before the creators settled on the current one. The original pilot had a completely different opening sequence, and there have been several special versions created for holiday episodes and milestone celebrations. The song has become so iconic that it's been covered by numerous bands and has appeared in various other media as a cultural reference. Here's something about the writing process that shows how collaborative the show really is. While Seth MacFarlane created the show and voices several main characters, the writing staff includes dozens of people who contribute jokes, storylines, and character development. Some of the funniest gags in the show come from writers who might never be credited on screen, but whose contributions are essential to the show's success. Let's talk about how Family Guy handles continuity, or rather, how it completely ignores it when convenient. Characters die and come back to life. Relationships change from episode to episode, and major life events are forgotten or contradicted regularly. This approach to storytelling was initially criticized by some viewers who expected more consistency, but it's actually become one of the show's defining characteristics, allowing for maximum creative freedom. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy is absolutely massive, including everything from action figures to clothing to home decor items featuring the characters. But here's something interesting. Some of the most popular merchandise features quotes and images from the most controversial episodes, suggesting that fans embrace the show's boundary-pushing content rather than shy away from it. Finally, here's a fact that brings us full circle to why Family Guy works so well as late-night viewing. The show's creators have always understood that comedy is often about timing and rhythm, and they've structured episodes to have natural peaks and valleys of energy. This makes it perfect for falling asleep to, because your brain can follow the familiar patterns even as you drift off, and the comfort of recognizing character voices and running gags creates a soothing background that helps many people relax. As you settle in for sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, there are animators working on new Family Guy episodes that won't air for almost a year, writers brainstorming increasingly ridiculous scenarios for Peter to stumble into, and voice actors bringing these beloved characters to life. The world of Quahog continues to evolve and surprise us, proving that even after more than 20 years, there are still new stories to tell and new ways to make us laugh at the beautiful absurdity of it all. Sweet dreams, and may your subconscious be filled with talking dogs, evil babies, and the gentle chaos of the Griffin family household. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're scrolling through YouTube at 3 in the morning looking for something to help you drift off to dreamland, you've stumbled upon the perfect video. Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes completely unhinged world of Family Guy with some truly wild facts that'll either lull you to sleep or keep you wide awake wondering how Seth MacFarlane's mind actually works. So grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and let's explore the wonderfully weird universe of Quahog, Rhode Island. Trust me, by the end of this journey through Family Guy's most fascinating secrets, you'll either be peacefully snoozing or have a whole new appreciation for just how crazy this show really gets. Let's start with something that might blow your mind. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? Yeah, you heard that right. The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and Fox thought they were done with the Griffin family forever. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block. The ratings were so incredible that Fox literally had to eat humble pie and bring the show back in 2005. Then, believe it or not, they canceled it again in 2007, only to reverse that decision just months later. Talk about a roller coaster relationship between a network and a show. Speaking of relationships, let's talk about the voice behind our favorite talking baby, Stewie Griffin. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice Stewie, he also voices Brian, Peter, Glenn Quagmire, and several other characters. But here's the kicker. MacFarlane based Stewie's voice on the accent of English actor Rex Harrison, who you might know from the classic musical My Fair Lady. Yeah, that sophisticated, slightly pompous British accent that makes Stewie sound like an evil mastermind. It's straight from a Broadway legend. MacFarlane has said in interviews that he wanted Stewie to sound like an old-school English gentleman, which makes it even funnier when this supposedly refined character is plotting world domination from his crib. Now, if you think the show pushes boundaries on television, you should hear about some of the stuff that never made it to air. The writers and animators have created countless scenes, jokes, and entire storylines that were deemed too controversial even for Family Guy's standards. And considering what does make it onto television, that's really saying something. There's apparently an entire vault of unused content that could probably fill several seasons worth of episodes. Some of these rejected bits have made their way onto DVD releases as deleted scenes, but many remain locked away forever, too wild even for the show known for having no limits. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Unlike many animated series that plan out entire seasons in advance, Family Guy often operates more like a live-action sitcom. The writers frequently come up with ideas on the spot, and episodes are sometimes completely rewritten just weeks before they're supposed to air. This spontaneous approach explains why the show can feel so fresh and unpredictable, but it also leads to some pretty intense crunch times for the animation team. Imagine trying to animate complex scenes with just days to spare before broadcast. Let's dive into some character secrets that most fans never realize. Brian the dog, everyone's favorite intellectual canine, was originally supposed to be just a regular pet. In the original concept, Brian was going to be a typical dog who couldn't talk and would just bark and fetch like any normal household pet. Seth MacFarlane decided to make him a talking character at the last minute, and thank goodness he did, because Brian's philosophical conversations and sarcastic wit have become some of the show's most memorable moments. It's wild to think that one of the most complex characters almost didn't have a voice at all. The show's animation style has some fascinating secrets too. Those seemingly simple character designs actually take an enormous amount of work to create. Each character has hundreds of different facial expressions and poses that animators can mix and match. Stewie alone has over 300 different mouth positions just for speaking different sounds. The animators have to keep track of all these variations to maintain consistency across episodes. It's like having a massive digital puppet show where every single movement has to be carefully orchestrated. Here's a fact that might make you appreciate the show's music even more. Seth MacFarlane isn't just the creator, writer, and voice actor for multiple characters. He's also a legitimate recording artist who's released several albums of traditional pop standards. His musical background heavily influences the show, which is why you'll notice that Family Guy has more musical numbers than most animated comedies. Those elaborate song and dance sequences aren't just thrown in for laughs. They're crafted by someone who genuinely understands musical theater and classic American songbook traditions. The show's cultural impact goes way beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has actually influenced real-world events and conversations. Politicians have referenced the show in speeches. Academics have written scholarly papers about its social commentary, and it's been credited with introducing younger audiences to cultural references they might never have encountered otherwise. Think about how many classic movies, TV shows, songs, and historical events you first learned about through a Family Guy cutaway gag. The show serves as this weird cultural bridge between different generations of entertainment. Now let's talk about some of the show's most controversial episodes and why they're so memorable. The writers have never shied away from tackling sensitive subjects, and sometimes their approach has sparked genuine debates about comedy, censorship, and social responsibility. Some episodes have been pulled from rotation, others have been edited for different markets, and a few have become legendary among fans, specifically because they pushed things too far. This willingness to court controversy has kept Family Guy relevant for over 2 decades, even as television landscape has changed dramatically around it. The voice acting process for Family Guy is unlike anything you'd expect. Seth MacFarlane often records multiple characters in the same session, essentially having conversations with himself. He'll record Peter's lines, then immediately switch to Brian's voice to respond, then jump to Stewie for the next exchange. Watching him work in the recording booth is apparently like witnessing someone with multiple personality disorder having a very organized conversation with themselves. Other voice actors have said it's both impressive and slightly unsettling to watch. Here's something that connects to the show's longevity. Family Guy has aired over 400 episodes, making it one of the longest-running animated series in television history. To put that in perspective, if you watched every single episode back-to-back, you'd be sitting there for more than 150 hours straight. That's almost a full week of continuous Family Guy content. The show has literally created enough material to entertain someone for an entire week without sleeping, eating, or taking a single break. The show's international versions reveal some fascinating cultural differences. Family Guy is broadcast in dozens of countries, and each version has to navigate different censorship standards and cultural sensitivities. In some countries, entire jokes are replaced with completely different content. In others, characters' names are changed, and certain running gags are modified to make sense to local audiences. There are versions of Family Guy where the cultural references are so different that they're essentially completely different shows with the same characters. Let's explore some behind-the-scenes drama that most fans never hear about. Like any long-running show, Family Guy has had its share of creative disagreements, contract disputes, and personality conflicts. Seth MacFarlane has been very public about his occasional frustrations with the show, even stepping back from day-to-day involvement for several seasons. There have been disputes over storylines, character development, and the general direction of the show. Some former writers and voice actors have shared stories about heated arguments in writers' rooms and recording sessions that had to be stopped because of creative differences. The show's merchandising empire is absolutely massive, but some of the most interesting products never made it to market. There have been proposed Family Guy video games, theme park attractions, and even a planned Broadway musical that would have featured the Griffin family in live-action musical theater. The legal and logistical challenges of adapting animated characters for different mediums have killed dozens of potential projects over the years. Imagine walking through a Family Guy theme park, or watching actors in Peter and Lois costumes singing on Broadway. Here's a production secret that reveals how much work goes into each episode. A single 22-minute episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial concept to final broadcast. The process involves dozens of writers, voice actors, animators, sound engineers, and editors. Every single frame is reviewed multiple times. Every joke is analyzed and often rewritten. And every visual gag is carefully planned and executed. What looks like simple animation on screen represents thousands of hours of collaborative creative work. The show's relationship with censorship has created some legendary stories. There are episodes that exist in multiple versions, with different levels of content depending on when and where they're broadcast. The uncensored DVD versions of some episodes contain jokes and scenes that have never been seen on television. Meanwhile, daytime reruns are edited so heavily that some episodes are barely recognizable. The writers have learned to create content in layers, knowing that different versions will need different levels of editing for different audiences. Family Guy's influence on internet culture deserves its own discussion. The show has generated countless memes, viral videos, and online discussions. Certain episodes have become legendary specifically because of how they're shared and referenced online. The show's cutaway gag format translates perfectly to social media, where short, punchy jokes can be easily shared and remixed. Some Family Guy moments have become more famous as internet memes than they ever were as television content. The voice acting talent that has appeared on Family Guy reads like a who's who of entertainment. Celebrities often jump at the chance to appear on the show, sometimes playing themselves, sometimes voicing original characters. The guest star list includes everyone from major Hollywood actors to political figures to professional athletes. Some celebrities have become recurring characters, while others have appeared just once but created memorable moments that fans still talk about years later. Here's something that might change how you watch the show. Many of the seemingly random cutaway gags are actually carefully constructed references to specific movies, TV shows, or historical events. The writers spend considerable time researching these references to make sure they're accurate, even when they're being completely absurd. There are entire databases that catalog every cultural reference in every episode, and the depth of knowledge required to understand all the jokes is honestly staggering. The show's animation has evolved significantly over its run, but not always in ways you might expect. While the overall character designs have remained consistent, the background art, lighting effects, and scene composition have become much more sophisticated. Early episodes look almost primitive compared to recent ones, but the evolution has been so gradual that most viewers don't notice. Comparing the pilot episode to current episodes is like looking at completely different shows that happen to use the same characters. Family Guy's impact on other animated shows cannot be overstated. The success of Family Guy paved the way for countless other adult animated comedies, from American Dad to Rick and Morty to BoJack Horseman. The show proved that animated comedies could tackle adult themes and attract mature audiences, opening up an entire genre that barely existed before. Many current animators and writers cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their work and career choices. The show's approach to storytelling often breaks conventional narrative rules in fascinating ways. Episodes frequently abandon their main plots entirely for extended tangents. Characters regularly break the fourth wall to address the audience directly, and the show often parodies its own format and conventions. This meta approach to comedy requires a level of self-awareness that's rare in television, and it's part of what keeps longtime fans engaged, even after hundreds of episodes. As we wind down this journey through Family Guy's hidden world, it's worth reflecting on how a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island became such a cultural phenomenon. The show succeeds because it taps into something fundamentally human about finding humor in chaos, about laughing at things that probably shouldn't be funny, and about the strange comfort of familiar characters, behaving in completely unpredictable ways. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or wide awake thinking about animated comedy theory, Family Guy continues to surprise, offend, entertain, and occasionally enlighten its audience after more than 20 years on the air. The show's ability to constantly reinvent itself while maintaining its core identity is perhaps the most impressive fact of all. Sweet dreams, and remember, somewhere in Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into trouble that's even weirder than anything we've discussed tonight. The chaos never really stops. And somehow, that's exactly what makes it so perfect for helping restless minds finally find peace. Until next time, sleep tight and don't let the giant chicken nightmares bite. Picture this. You're lying in bed, ready to drift off to sleep, but your brain just won't switch off. Well, tonight's different. Tonight, we're going on a gentle journey through the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy with some truly fascinating facts that'll help ease you into dreamland. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you want, and let's explore the Griffin family universe together. Let me start with something that might surprise you. Peter Griffin wasn't always meant to be the bumbling father figure we know today. The creators originally envisioned him as more of a traditional sitcom dad, but Seth MacFarlane quickly realized that making Peter completely incompetent would be far more entertaining. This decision shaped the entire show's DNA, creating a character whose stupidity knows no bounds. Speaking of Peter's origins, here's a delightfully absurd detail about his background. According to the show's mythology, Peter is actually of mixed Irish and Mexican heritage, which explains some of his more colorful personality traits. His biological father, Mickey McFinnigan, lives in Ireland and has a talking sheep companion named O'Brien. When Peter finally meets Mickey, they bond over a drinking contest, because of course they do. It's these little touches of insanity that make Family Guy so uniquely entertaining. The Griffin family tree is absolutely bonkers when you really dig into it. Take Francis Griffin, Peter's strict Catholic stepfather who despised Lois for not being Irish enough. This man was so religiously rigid that he even dismissed the Pope's approval of Peter and Lois's marriage. But here's the kicker. Francis later became the Pope's special assistant. The irony is delicious, and it perfectly captures the show's love of contradictory character development. Now, let's talk about something that might help you sleep better: the show's approach to time and continuity. Unlike many animated series that maintain strict timelines, Family Guy operates in a floating timeline where characters can age or stay the same age depending on what the story needs. Stewie, for instance, has been 1 year old for over 2 decades, yet he's traveled through time, built complex inventions, and had philosophical discussions about existence. This fluid approach to reality creates a dreamlike quality that's oddly soothing. Here's a gentle fact about Chris Griffin that showcases the show's surprising depth beneath all the chaos. Despite being portrayed as academically hopeless, Chris actually has genuine artistic talent. In one episode, he gets accepted to art school, but chooses to stay with his family instead. It's moments like these that remind us there's heart underneath all the madness, even in characters who seem purely comedic. Let me share something about Stewie that's both fascinating and oddly comforting. His relationship with Brian the dog represents one of television's most unusual friendships. They've been through adventures across time and space. They've argued like an old married couple, and when Brian died, Stewie was so heartbroken, he literally rewrote time to save him. There's something beautiful about that level of devotion, even in a cartoon about talking dogs and genius babies. The voice acting in Family Guy is another soothing element worth considering as you drift off. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, essentially having conversations with himself for hours during recording sessions. Imagine the surreal experience of being alone in a sound booth, switching between a baby's British accent, a dog's sophisticated tone, and a grown man's childish outbursts. It's like a one-person theater performance that's been going on for decades. Here's something wonderfully absurd about the show's background characters. Cleveland Brown, Peter's neighbor and friend, was originally just meant to appear in a few episodes, but his calm, measured way of speaking proved so funny when contrasted with Peter's chaos that he became a main character and eventually got his own spin-off show. Sometimes the best things in life happen by accident, which is a nice thought to carry into sleep. Let's explore some of the more obscure Griffin family members, because their stories have a mythical quality perfect for bedtime. There's King Arthur Griffin, an ancestor who could supposedly pull Excalibur from the stone. Then there's Moses Griffin, who led the Jews out of Egypt while complaining about billboards and demanding more Jolly Ranchers. The show creates these elaborate historical figures that exist purely to set up jokes, but there's something wonderfully imaginative about building an entire fictional lineage. The relationship between Stewie and his stuffed bear Rupert is oddly touching when you think about it. This genius baby, capable of building time machines and mind control devices, still needs his security blanket in the form of a simple teddy bear. It reminds us that no matter how complex we become, we all need something soft and familiar to hold on to. That's a comforting thought as you settle into your own bed. Family Guy's approach to cutaway gags creates a unique storytelling rhythm that's almost hypnotic. The show will interrupt itself mid-scene to show us a completely unrelated flashback or fantasy sequence, then seamlessly return to the main story. It's like how our minds work when we're falling asleep, jumping from one random thought to another without any logical connection. Yet somehow, it all flows together. Here's a fascinating detail about Meg Griffin that reveals the show's unexpected complexity. Despite being constantly mistreated by her family, actress Mila Kunis has mentioned in interviews that playing Meg taught her about resilience and finding humor in difficult situations. The character, who seems to exist purely for abuse, actually represents something deeper about perseverance and maintaining hope even when everything seems to go wrong. The show's relationship with censorship has always been playful rather than aggressive. When certain words can't be said on television, the characters find creative ways around it, often making the censored version funnier than the uncensored one would have been. There's something delightfully subversive about finding humor within constraints, like creating art within specific rules. Let me tell you about Brian's literary aspirations, which add a layer of melancholy to his character that's perfect for quiet reflection. He's constantly working on novels that never get published, struggling with alcoholism, and dealing with the existential crisis of being a talking dog in a world that doesn't quite make sense. His failures are deeply human, reminding us that everyone struggles with their dreams and disappointments. The background music in Family Guy deserves more recognition than it gets. The composers create these elaborate orchestral pieces for scenes that last only seconds, treating throwaway gags with the same musical attention as epic movie moments. There's something beautiful about that level of craftsmanship being applied to the most ridiculous situations imaginable. Quagmire's house being right next to the Griffins creates an interesting dynamic that's been running for over 20 years. These neighbors, who are simultaneously friends and enemies, who know each other's secrets but continue to be surprised by each other's actions. It's like a very slow, very weird sitcom relationship that unfolds over decades rather than seasons. The show's treatment of death is uniquely casual and somehow comforting because of it. Characters die and come back regularly. Time gets rewritten, and consequences are often temporary. In a world where permanence can feel overwhelming, there's something soothing about a universe where mistakes can be undone and second chances are always available. Here's something about the show's animation style that contributes to its dreamlike quality. The characters are drawn with simple, clean lines that make them feel both familiar and slightly unreal. Their movements are fluid but exaggerated, creating a world that feels just removed enough from reality to be purely entertaining rather than stressful. The recurring theme of Peter's various jobs throughout the series creates a sense of endless possibility. He's been everything from a bodega owner to a Renaissance artist to a country music star, often within the same season. There's something liberating about a character who can completely reinvent himself whenever the story demands it, suggesting that we all have infinite potential for change. Family Guy's approach to celebrity cameos is uniquely self-aware. When famous people appear on the show, they're often playing exaggerated versions of themselves, or completely different characters entirely. It creates this meta-textual layer where reality and fiction blend together in ways that feel dreamlike and surreal. The show's relationship with its own continuity is fascinatingly relaxed. Characters will reference events from previous episodes as if they happened, then completely contradict those same events in the next episode. It's like how dreams work. Everything makes perfect sense until you try to examine the logic too closely. Let me share something about the show's writing process that might interest you as you drift off. The writer's room for Family Guy is known for being one of the most collaborative in television, with jokes being refined and improved by multiple people before making it to air. Each throwaway line has been polished by a room full of comedy writers, which explains why even the smallest moments often contain multiple layers of humor. The relationship between Lois and Peter represents something uniquely optimistic despite all their problems. No matter how much chaos Peter creates, no matter how frustrated Lois becomes, they always find their way back to each other by the end of each episode. It's a cartoon version of unconditional love that's oddly reassuring. Stewie's gradual evolution from would-be world conqueror to adventure-seeking toddler reflects the show's own maturation over time. Early Stewie was genuinely menacing, plotting elaborate schemes to murder his mother. Modern Stewie is more interested in friendship and exploration. It's like watching a character literally grow up, even though he's technically stayed the same age. The show's use of musical numbers creates these unexpected moments of pure joy in the middle of chaotic episodes. Characters will suddenly break into elaborate song and dance routines that rival professional Broadway productions, then immediately return to the mundane problems of suburban life. These musical interludes feel like shared dreams where anything is possible. Family Guy's approach to social commentary is gentle rather than preachy, which makes it perfect bedtime viewing. The show addresses serious topics through the lens of absurd situations, making complex issues feel manageable rather than overwhelming. It's comedy as comfort food, nourishing without being heavy. The longevity of the show itself is something worth contemplating as you prepare for sleep. Family Guy has been on television for over 2 decades, meaning that some viewers have literally grown up with these characters. There's something deeply comforting about having fictional friends who are always there, always ready to entertain you, no matter what's happening in your real life. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the show's history. When the writers temporarily killed off the beloved character, the fan reaction was so intense that they brought him back within a few episodes. It demonstrated that beneath all the irreverence and chaos, people genuinely care about these animated characters as if they were real friends and family members. The show's treatment of mundane activities, like grocery shopping, going to work, or sitting in traffic, transforms everyday boredom into comedic gold. There's something oddly therapeutic about seeing ordinary frustrations played out in exaggerated cartoon form. It makes your own daily annoyances feel more manageable and even potentially funny. Here's something beautiful about the show's approach to friendship. Peter's relationship with his drinking buddies at the Drunken Clam represents a very specific type of male bonding, sitting around, talking about nothing important, and just enjoying each other's company. In our increasingly connected but somehow isolated world, there's something nostalgic and appealing about that kind of simple, uncomplicated friendship. The show's relationship with its own past creates interesting layers of nostalgia. Characters will reference things that happened in earlier seasons as if they were childhood memories, creating this sense of shared history between the audience and the fictional characters. It's like having old friends who remember the same funny stories you do. As we near the end of our journey through Family Guy facts, consider how the show serves as a kind of modern folklore. These characters and their ridiculous adventures have become part of our shared cultural vocabulary. People quote Peter Griffin the way previous generations might have referenced folk tales or classic literature. In a weird way, the Griffin family has become America's unofficial cartoon family, as recognizable as any real celebrity. The show's ending credits often feature the characters sitting on their couch, watching television just like the audience is doing. It creates this mirror effect, where fiction and reality blend together in a peaceful domestic scene. After all the chaos and adventure of each episode, everyone ends up exactly where they started, at home, together, ready to do it all again tomorrow. And that's perhaps the most comforting thing about Family Guy. No matter how crazy things get, no matter what disasters befall the Griffin family, they always end up back home, safe and sound, ready for the next adventure. It's a universe where problems are temporary, love is permanent, And there's always something to laugh about, even in the strangest situations. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, take comfort in knowing that somewhere in the animated town of Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into some ridiculous situation that will somehow work out just fine by morning. Sweet dreams. And remember, no matter how weird your own dreams get tonight, they probably won't be any stranger than a typical Family Guy episode. Sleep well, knowing that laughter truly is the best medicine, even in cartoon form. The Griffin family will be there tomorrow, ready to entertain you with more wonderfully weird adventures whenever you need them. Good night. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're settling in for some late-night entertainment and your brain is ready to drift off into dreamland, I've got the perfect collection of wild Family Guy facts that'll either help you doze off peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this show even exists. Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and absolutely insane world of everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. Did you know that Peter Griffin has an astronomical body count that would make serial killers jealous? We're talking thousands of deaths, and honestly, most of them happened in the most ridiculous ways possible. This isn't your typical cartoon violence where characters bounce back with cartoon physics. Peter has legitimately caused more destruction than some natural disasters. Speaking of Peter's mayhem, his very first kill happened way back in the second episode of the entire series. Remember that Roadrunner from Looney Tunes? Yeah, Peter straight up ran that bird down with his car, flattening it completely. What makes this even funnier is Peter's reaction afterward, casually asking if he hit an ostrich while the Roadrunner is clearly pancaked on his windshield. This moment basically set the tone for everything that would follow in the series. But here's where things get really wild. Peter once literally took over Death's job in the show, and with that cosmic responsibility came the power to kill people just by touching them. During his stint as the Grim Reaper, he accidentally killed 2 airplane pilots mid-flight simply because he forgot to wear mittens. Can you imagine being a passenger on that plane? Thankfully, actress Karen Black was somehow there to land the aircraft, or everyone would have died in that crash too. The hospital incidents are particularly disturbing when you think about them. Peter somehow convinced people to let him work as a doctor, which is terrifying enough on its own, but then he actually killed a patient during what should have been a routine procedure. The patient even thanked Peter for saving his life right before dying, which adds this darkly comedic layer that only Family Guy could pull off. Here's a fact that might help you sleep better or give you nightmares, depending on your perspective. Peter once worked as a babysitter and literally left a baby to drown in a bathtub. He casually walked away, leaving behind drain cleaner in case of clogs, soap next to a radio, and towels on the roof. The complete negligence and absurdity of this situation perfectly captures Peter's character. He's simultaneously well-meaning and catastrophically incompetent. The show took Peter's violence to cinematic levels during various parody episodes. When they did their Kill Bill homage, Peter went full samurai warrior mode, engaging in what can only be described as a sword-fighting bloodbath. The choreography was surprisingly well animated for a show that usually relies on simple character movements, and Peter managed to take down 15 opponents all by himself in pure martial arts mayhem. Then there's Peter's brief career as a superhero parody called Red Stool, which was obviously their take on Deadpool. The name comes from the fact that his cancer specifically affected his rear end, because of course Family Guy would go there. As Red Stool, Peter maintained Deadpool's tendency for extreme violence, adding several more bodies to his ever-growing count while cracking inappropriate jokes the entire time. The Walter White parody deserves special mention because it perfectly captured the essence of Breaking Bad while maintaining Family Guy's signature chaos. Peter as Heisenberg was just as dangerous as the original, dropping bodies left and right while somehow making it comedically absurd rather than genuinely threatening. The transformation from bumbling father to calculating criminal mastermind was surprisingly well executed for a show known more for cutaway gags than character development. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Peter's violence is how it affects his own family. He once accidentally killed his entire family through carbon monoxide poisoning, and his reaction was essentially wondering if his day's work was worth it. Sure, they all came back in the next episode because cartoon logic, but the casual way Peter processes causing his loved ones' deaths is genuinely unsettling when you think about it too deeply. The fight scenes with Ernie the Giant Chicken are legendary among Family Guy fans, and for good reason. These battles have spanned multiple episodes and caused more collateral damage than most action movies. They've fought in airports, construction sites, moving trains, and even hijacked time machines to battle across different historical periods. The destruction they cause is absolutely massive, with buildings collapsing, vehicles exploding, and innocent bystanders getting caught in their ridiculous feud. What makes the chicken fights even more absurd is that they started over an expired coupon. Think about that for a moment. These two characters have caused thousands of deaths, millions of dollars in property damage, and untold chaos across multiple dimensions, all because of a disagreement about a coupon's validity. It's the perfect example of Family Guy's ability to take tiny conflicts and escalate them to world-ending proportions. The time travel elements in their fights add another layer of complexity and destruction. When Peter and Ernie crash through different time periods, they're not just affecting the present day, they're literally altering history itself. The poor driver of that futuristic train they destroyed was probably just trying to get to work in his cyberpunk timeline. And suddenly, he's vaporized because two idiots from the early 21st century decided to continue their grocery store dispute across the space-time continuum. Here's something that might surprise you. Peter has actually caused more deaths through his various acts of terrorism, albeit usually accidental ones. When he befriended a terrorist named Mahmoud, Peter was completely oblivious to what was happening. All he cared about was the attention and perks of his new friendship. When Mahmoud gave him what Peter thought was a phone, he kept trying to use it to make calls, not realizing it was actually a bomb detonator. The explosions that resulted from Peter's innocent phone calls were catastrophic. Each time he tried to dial Mahmoud, another building would explode somewhere in the city. The fact that Peter remained completely clueless about what was happening makes it both hilarious and terrifying. Even when the gang managed to stop Mahmoud's planned attack on a bridge, Peter still had that detonator and used it again while trying to call a restaurant for reservations. The crossover episode with The Simpsons showcased Peter's destructive capabilities on an even grander scale. His fight with Homer Simpson leveled entire city blocks and resulted in mass casualties that would normally be associated with natural disasters or military conflicts. The two fathers' brawl started over Peter insulting The Simpsons show, which escalated into a city-destroying conflict that somehow ended with both characters gaining superpowers from radioactive waste. One particularly disturbing sequence involved Peter's brief stint as a high school student, where he arranged for a school shooting to get revenge on popular kids who ignored him. Even though he called it off at the last minute, the attack still went through, and the screams and gunshots in the background suggest multiple casualties among innocent children. This episode aired during a time when such events were unfortunately becoming more common in real life, making Peter's involvement even more unsettling. Peter's various explosions of hospitals deserve special mention for their sheer scale of destruction. When he disagreed with vaccines, he dressed as the Joker and blew up an entire medical facility just to prevent Stewie from getting a shot. The explosion was massive enough to level the building and likely killed dozens of patients, doctors, nurses, and staff members who were just trying to provide health care. But he didn't stop there. Peter later destroyed a children's hospital in another equally senseless act of destruction. The casual way the show presents these incidents, with Peter treating the explosions like minor inconveniences rather than mass casualty events, perfectly captures the dark comedy that Family Guy specializes in. It's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. The missile incidents showcase Peter's ability to cause destruction on a military scale. During his fight with President Trump, Peter's head got slammed onto a big red button that launched multiple missiles. Each missile likely killed hundreds of people in massive explosions, turning what started as a personal dispute into an international incident with catastrophic consequences. What's particularly interesting about Peter's character is how the show manages to make him sympathetic despite his astronomical body count. He's never intentionally malicious. He's just incredibly stupid and impulsive with access to dangerous situations. This combination makes him simultaneously lovable and terrifying, which is probably why the character has remained popular for over 2 decades. The physics of Peter's destruction often defy logic, even by cartoon standards. When he and Ernie crashed that Ferris wheel, it rolled through the city like a massive wheel of death, flattening everything in its path. The scale of destruction was apocalyptic, but it was presented with such absurd cartoon logic that viewers could laugh at it rather than being horrified by the implications. Peter's various career changes always seem to result in multiple casualties. Whether he's working as a doctor, babysitter, death himself, or any other profession, people end up dying as a direct result of his incompetence. It's actually impressive how consistently dangerous he is across all walks of life. There's literally no job safe enough for Peter Griffin to perform without causing fatalities. The show's commitment to continuity regarding Peter's violence is surprisingly strong for a series that usually ignores consequences. Characters who die in one episode rarely come back, unless there's a specific plot reason, and the destruction Peter causes often gets referenced in later episodes. This attention to detail makes his actions feel more impactful than typical cartoon violence. Here's a fun sleeping fact. The total estimated death toll directly caused by Peter Griffin throughout the series is approaching 3,000 people. That number includes direct kills, collateral damage from his fights, explosions he's caused, and various accidents resulting from his stupidity. To put that in perspective, Peter has personally caused more deaths than many historical disasters. The international incidents Peter has triggered would realistically make him one of the most wanted criminals on the planet. He's blown up bridges, destroyed government buildings, launched military missiles, and caused diplomatic crises with multiple countries. Yet somehow he continues living his normal suburban life without any legal consequences, which is perhaps the most unrealistic aspect of a show featuring a talking baby and a martini-drinking dog. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the Family Guy universe, Peter Griffin is probably causing another catastrophe that will add to his ever-growing body count. Sweet dreams, and maybe avoid any neighborhoods where middle-aged men are having disputes with large poultry. In the world of Family Guy, such conflicts have a tendency to escalate into city-leveling disasters that make natural catastrophes look like minor inconveniences. The beautiful absurdity of Peter's character is that despite being responsible for more destruction than most fictional supervillains, he's still somehow the protagonist we're supposed to root for. That's the magic of Family Guy, taking the most inappropriate situations and making them laugh out loud funny through sheer audacity and perfect comedic timing. Now close your eyes and let these wonderfully bizarre facts carry you off into dreamland, where hopefully giant chickens and expired coupons can't hurt you.